It's currently winter here in Wisconsin, and now is a great time to make a video to encourage you and to show you how much money you can save by growing your food at your own home in your garden in comparison with going to the grocery store and purchasing food there. I've received comments in the past about how gardening can be a waste of time and that my gardening system specifically is actually more cost effective than it is worth to actually grow your own food. In other words, it's better just to go to the grocery store, according to some people, than to grow food the way that we have been growing food here on our homestead. I can confidently tell you with 100% accuracy that that is absolutely false. Our total garden cost was $500. That includes the infrastructure and the soil combined. The infrastructure was $200. I have a video just on that. And the garden soil that we added to our beds was about $300. Let's look at my favorite thing we grew last season, and that was the butternut squash. We harvested 37 butternut squash last season alone. I took the butternut squash, I put them on a kitchen scale. I got an average weight of 4.2 pounds. So if you multiply 4.2 pounds times 37, it comes out to about 155 in total butternut squash weight. That's a lot of butternut squash. I started looking around at average price per pound at different grocery stores, and I purposely went to Walmart and Aldi to get a good average price. Aldi's are a really popular grocery store. Obviously, Walmarts are located pretty much everywhere, and a lot of people have access to those stores, which is why I took those prices for this video. The Walmart price that I found recently at the time of this video is $1.28 per pound. So if we take $1.28, multiply that by 155 pounds of butternut squash, we're gonna come up with a pretty big number here. That number comes to $198 and some change. So just shy of $200 we grew in value in American dollars of butternut squash just last season. The point I'm making here is that from one good crop, from one good season, and one good harvest, we saved almost $200 using cheap Walmart prices. Currently at Aldi in my area, butternut squash are selling for $1.39 per pound, which of course is more than $1.28, which is the Walmart price. Using Aldi's prices, we would have $216 worth of butternut squash that we harvested. So $198 for Walmart prices, $216 for Aldi's prices. We saved even more money using that price. You build a garden one time, it's very cost effective in the future just maintaining it. $500 to get it started. We just saved about $200 in butternut squash, probably more. We've got $300 more to go just to come out even, and this is one crop. I didn't talk about our tomatoes, our beans, our peas, onions, potatoes, sweet potatoes, peppers, any of that stuff yet. Cucumbers, this is just scratching the surface. We grew a ton of celery last year. We have a year's worth of carrots in our fridge and freezer at the moment. So this is just getting started. We're gonna be way ahead of $500 if we went through every single individual crop. Let's take a dive into our tomato harvest. I wanna go into tomatoes now because that is the most common crop that people grow, at least here in the United States. Last season, we grew hundreds of pounds of tomatoes. The majority of those tomatoes were Roma tomatoes. So I'm going to take the average Roma tomato price at Walmart and see how we get ahead financially here. If you were to go to the store and buy any tomato, even the cheapest one, and bought hundreds of pounds of them, that would cost you a lot of money. Last September, maybe late August, I can't remember exactly, our kitchen table was filled with tomatoes. We would lay them out on the table on top of newspaper. We would can them when we had time and then harvest more and put them out on the table, can those when we had time, and we would just wash, rinse, and repeat this cycle 4 or 5 times to the point where we got so tired of canning, I just started putting them in plastic bags and putting them in the freezer. I was freezing tomatoes whole so that we could process them at a later date. I mentioned earlier how most of our tomatoes were Roma tomatoes because we use them for processing and sauce. The current price at Walmart for Roma tomatoes is $2.46. Just to make numbers simple for this video, I did not average out all of our tomatoes. Like I said, we grew 4 different types. Some were heirloom, some were bush style, some were indeterminate, cherry tomatoes. So it was just really hard to get an average price. That's why we're using Romas, because that's what we had the most pounds out of. But just to keep numbers easy, let's say we had exactly 100 pounds of tomatoes, which I know is not accurate, but it's the minimum just to give you a good idea of how much money you can save with a great tomato harvest like we had last season. So $2.64 is the price currently at our Walmart per pound for Roma tomatoes. If you multiply that by 100 pounds, you come up with $246. Conservatively, we have $246 worth of tomatoes, either in sauce or frozen, or we had a chance to eat some of them fresh earlier on in the year. If you add our tomato harvest value with our butternut squash harvest value, you come up with $444 conservatively. I would say it's much higher than that simply because we grew way more than 100 pounds of tomatoes. And again, these are the cheapest prices I could find in our area. Let me just be clear that this video is not a response to these negative comments about how our garden style is actually costing us more money than saving us money. But I do like those comments from time to time because it gives me ideas on how I can help and benefit other people. Sometimes those comments are harmful and they discourage people from growing their own food rather than encouraging them to grow their own food and take more of a responsibility. Some people choose not to garden because they've been told it's too expensive to get started. It can be expensive, but people are being told this by people who probably spent a lot of money getting their garden started, and then maybe they didn't have a good growing season, or it was difficult, or something happened and they realized they spent hundreds, maybe thousands of dollars to get a garden started, and then they didn't have very much luck and they didn't come out financially. I'm here to tell you from firsthand experience that you can save, which basically means you make a lot of money by growing your own food if you have a good harvest. There's never been a better time to get information. Most of the information is free. All you have to do is go on YouTube or go onto some website and find out how people are growing food for very low cost and a very low entry cost to get into it. To have the garden that we have, the infrastructure and the soil, and to have the results that it's had in the past, it took research, creativity, and ambition. If you took away any one of those three things, that garden would not have been successful. I've noticed that a lot of people who don't make money on their garden or don't save money usually buy plant starts, which can cost a lot, rather than growing from seed. They often use really expensive lumber rather than fence pickets like we use for the raised beds. If you want to spend a lot of money on your garden, I'm all for it. If you want to do that, you go ahead. What I'm trying to do is encourage people who don't have a lot of money to get started or just don't want to spend a lot of money on their garden. I want to encourage them that you don't have to have a lot of money to have a successful garden in the first place. Do not let other people convince you that that is not true. So we came up with $444 from growing our tomatoes and harvesting them and our butternut squash and harvesting them. If you don't have a good harvest, then you're not going to come out, or it's going to take you more years to come out ahead. Let's just say it takes you 3 years to come out ahead. You spend X amount of dollars on your garden infrastructure to get it going, and the first year goes pretty well, second year it gets better, third year it gets even better than that, and you finally scratch the surface of being even. Let's just say you spent $2,000 on your garden infrastructure, you added up your produce value from the harvest from those 3 years, and you finally got to around $2,000. That's still way better than not starting in the first place. Most people don't come out even their first year. Just realize that. It takes a while to get things established. But if you're committed, like I said, if you research things, if you have ambition, if you're creative, you can find ways to come out ahead in your very first year. Of course, it helps to have really good soil and really good seed. Don't forget about really good soil and really good seed. I don't care what kind of gardener you are. If your soil's bad, your seeds are bad, you're not going to have a good harvest. One of the many things I look forward to doing this upcoming growing season is itemizing each individual crop and trying to be better at documenting how much I save by growing each one. I gave you an example for butternut squash and tomatoes, but this upcoming season, I think I'm going to try doing that with all of my crops and even being more accurate. I'm hoping to do that with our green beans, our carrots, our potatoes, our sweet potatoes, our peppers, everything we grow. So after I harvest them, sometimes we can't harvest all of them at once. It's little by little. Like green beans, for example, you can harvest those for several months and they keep growing back. Well, I need to write down the totals and weight, find the average price per pound, and then at the end of the season, add it all up. I am very certain that if we would have added up all of the other crops that we harvested from this past season, not just the tomatoes and butternut squash, but all of the other things we grew from our garden that did very well, we would be way beyond $500. And I think you can do the same thing with a humble backyard garden. You're ambitious, creative, put in your time and effort, do some research, you'll be great. Don't give up. Don't let people tell you you can't do it, because you can. I proved it, and a lot of other gardeners have as well. Thanks for watching.